Chapter 1. Rust and Ozone. The heavy metallic grind of a key turning in a rusted lock. A massive steel door groans open, followed by a low, hollow hum echoing through a vast, empty space. In the distance, the faint, rhythmic drip of water. They tell you old paper has a smell. They're lying. Old paper has a voice. If you lock 1,000,000 confessions, police reports, and death certificates in a single basement, they start to vibrate. It's a frequency the human ear can't catch, but your spine feels it perfectly. I'm standing on the threshold of vault number 4. It's a place that doesn't exist on any digital map of this city. I followed a trail of breadcrumbs here, anonymous letters and half-whispered hints from a former Ministry of the Interior archivist. The poor bastard drank himself to death before he could tell me the whole truth. But he managed one thing. He gave me the key. It's heavy, cold, and smells like machine oil, an old, stagnant fear. I take my first step inside. SFX, muffled footsteps on concrete. The crunch of grit and debris under boots. The sharp click of a high-powered flashlight. A buzz of electricity as the grid groans to life. Overhead, fluorescent tubes flicker and pop with a sharp, static hiss. The light doesn't shine here. It suffers. These old tubes are coated in layers of dead insects, spitting out a sickly, twitching, pale glow. In this strobe light rhythm, the shelves look like the exposed ribs of some giant, gutted beast. The smell doesn't hit you right away. First, it's just dust. Then, it's a sharp tang of ozone from the bad wiring, damp concrete, and something sweet, like rotting cellulose, or hope left unattended for 30 years. Well, hello there, archive of the missing, I mutter. My voice sounds flat. The room just sucks up the sound, refusing to let it echo. I walk past the rows. They aren't organized by year. On the ends of the stacks, there are hand-inked signs in thick black calligraphy. Spontaneous dematerialization. Forest zones, atypical behavior. Vehicles, non-return. My fingers slide over the spines. Rough cardboard, gray twine ties. Every knot is a tragedy that never got an ending. I stop at a section labeled National Parks and Reserves. The files here are thicker than the others. I pull one at random. Case number 411-B. Subject, Kolesnikov, AV, age 6. Location, Caucasus Biosphere Reserve, Mount Fichte area. SFX, the rustle of heavy paper, the sound of twine being untied, the crisp, brittle sound of pages turning. I start to read. Without meaning to, my internal monologue slips into the dry, detached tone of a detective. Reported missing at 14:15 during a group rest stop. Mother turned away for 15 seconds to pack a thermos. The child was within line of sight, in an open clearing. No screams heard. Search dogs lost the scent exactly where the boy left his toy, a plastic soldier. I look at the clipped photo, black and white. A kid in a sun hat, grinning with a gap-toothed smile. I turn the page. A report found 2 days later. Body not recovered. 3 miles uphill, in terrain inaccessible to an adult climber without gear. The subject's boots were located. Laces tied in a double knot. Socks missing from inside the boots. No signs of the child's presence within a 5-mile radius. Weather at the time of disappearance shifted from clear skies to anomalous fog within 3 minutes. I can feel a pulse starting to throb in the back of my neck. This is classic missing 411. I've read about this stuff happening in the States, but here, in the bowels of the ministry, these files have been sitting here for decades. Thousands of people stepping over a threshold and vanishing into thin air, leaving behind nothing but a pair of neatly removed shoes or clothes turned inside out. I close the Kolesnikov file. My palms are sweating now, leaving a damp smudge on the gray cardboard. It's getting colder in here. Or maybe it's just my imagination projecting that mountain fog into the aisles. Chapter 2. The Geography of Coincidence. SFX. The low-rising drone of the ventilation system, sounding like a distant moan. The scuttle of rat claws somewhere deep in the back of the corridor. I go deeper. The archive is much bigger than the building looks from the outside. It's a labyrinth. The layout wasn't designed by an architect. It was built with a sick kind of logic. The shelves get taller here, disappearing into the blackness near the ceiling. I get the feeling the files on the top shelves are watching my flashlight, like the eyes of nocturnal birds. The second section I stumble into is labeled with a single word: city. The smell changes here, metal and old electricity. I run my hand along the folders, feeling the fine dust settle under my fingernails. The voice recorder in my jacket pocket is running. I'm documenting every movement, every thought. It's a professional habit, but right now, it feels like my only anchor to reality. Section. City. I whisper into the mic. Hundreds of cases here. People who went out for cigarettes. People who stepped into an elevator and never stepped out on the first floor. I open a folder marked Litany Prospect, 1982. Inside is a report about a man in a queue. He was standing in line for bread, chatting with a neighbor. When she turned away to grab her change, he was gone. The line was packed. Nobody saw where he went. Just an empty space between two overcoats. I can feel the paranoia starting to take root. This isn't just statistics. It's a system. It's like something is reaching out and plucking people from the fabric of reality, like loose threads from an old sweater. My flashlight catches an especially old shelf at the very end of the hall. It looks different. The shelves aren't metal. They're dark, stained oak. It looks almost black. There are only about 30 files on it, and they aren't dusty. The spines are clean and glossy, like they were placed there this morning. My heart does a jagged little somersault. I shouldn't go over there. The screenwriter in my head is screaming, "Turn around and run." But the journalist, that curious bastard who's always looking for his death in exchange for a headline, he pushes me forward. I walk to the oak shelf. There are no category names here, only dates. 2024, 2025, 2026. My fingers are shaking. I grab the folder labeled with the current year. It's heavy. There's something inside besides paper. I can feel an object shifting. SFX. The sharp snap of twine breaking. It gives way too easily. The protagonist's heavy breathing. The sound of something plastic hitting the concrete floor. A keychain hits the floor. My keychain. A scratched-up little astronaut figure my sister gave me for my last birthday. One edge is melted. I accidentally singed it with a lighter a month ago. I freeze. I'm afraid to move. My flashlight is trembling in my left hand, the beam dancing over the folder like a frantic moth. I open the first page. This isn't typewritten. It's a printout. Fresh, laser-printed ink. Missing Person Investigation Report Number 2026-X. Subject: Nevsky Mark Igorovich. Age: 32. Occupation: investigative journalist. My legs give out. I slumped down onto the cold concrete, my eyes locked on the lines burning themselves into my memory. Circumstances of disappearance. Subject arrived at the address. I read the address. It's my home, my apartment, Moja Ulica. But below that, there's a handwritten note in that same beautiful, flowing calligraphy I saw in the files from the 40s. Located in the archive. Transition phase, complete. Body will not be required. I flip the page. There's a photo. It's still warm, like it just came out of the printer. It's a picture of me, right now, from behind. I'm sitting on the floor between the stacks, illuminated by the beam of my own flashlight. You can see the edge of the oak shelf and the orange patch on the sleeve of my jacket. But that's not the worst part. In the corner of the photo, in the thick shadows right behind me, there's a silhouette. Something long, unnaturally thin, with fingers like the branches of a dead tree, and it's reaching for my shoulder. I feel it then. In the absolute silence of the archive, right behind my head, a dry, creaking sound of a file folder closing, and then the sound of an intake of breath, right next to the microphone. My heart stops. I'm terrified to turn around, because I know on the next page of file number 2026-X, it already says exactly what's going to happen in the next second. Mark's breath is ragged, hitching. You can hear the plastic casing of the flashlight rattling against his palm. In the background, there's a faint, borderline ultrasonic hum, like high-voltage power lines buzzing in the dark. Chapter 3. The point of no return, the mirror. I don't turn around. My muscles have turned into cold, stubborn lead. That sound, that short, wet intake of breath right at the base of my neck, it wasn't my imagination. The air behind me shifted, carrying a scent no, not rot. It was the smell of old, stagnant water and antiseptic. The way a morgue smells when it's trying too hard to seem clean. Slowly, millimeter by millimeter, I slide my gaze back to the photo in the folder. In the shot, the thing behind me has become clearer. Or maybe my eyes have just adjusted to the grain of the image. Its fingers are almost touching my shoulder. Who's there? My voice cracks, barely a jagged whisper. The only answer is the drone of the lamps. I spin around, lunging with my flashlight like it's a weapon. The beam slices the darkness, frantic across the shelves, catching the spines of folders, dusty twine ties, the bare concrete floor. Empty. Nobody. Just endless rows of stacks disappearing into an impenetrable gloom. But that feeling, that sensation of being watched, it hasn't gone anywhere. It's become tactile now, like static electricity before a thunderstorm. The hair on my arms is standing straight up. I look back at my file. The pages feel heavy, like they've been soaked in blood. Subject's vehicle, VAZ2107, plate K4420T, located at the 47th kilometer of the Priozersk highway. Engine off, key in the ignition, driver's side door open. A voice recorder and a half-eaten sandwich were found on the seat. No signs of a struggle or fluid leaks detected. That highway. I was on it this morning. I remember that sandwich. I bought it at the gas station at 8:15. It was dry and too salty. I tossed it on the passenger seat, figuring I'd finish it later. But I'm here. I'm in the archive. How can my car be sitting on a highway if I haven't even left this basement yet? My fingers frantically flip through the file. I'm hunting for an explanation, and I stumble upon a clipped-in fragment of another report. It's held by a rusty paperclip that's left a brown stain on the paper, looking like dried blood. Addendum to file number 2026-X. Comparative analysis. Dyatlov Pass Incident, 1959. SFX. The rustle of yellowed, brittle paper. The whir of an old film projector. The rapid clicking of frames. I read, and everything inside me turns to ice. The text was typed on an old manual typewriter, the letters O and E clogged with ink. Similarity to the Nevsky, MI case lies in the nature of the trauma to soft tissues and the skeletal frame, despite a total lack of external skin damage. In the Dyatlov group case, subjects Zolotaryov, Dubinina, multiple rib fractures and internal organ damage were noted, consistent with a high-speed vehicle impact. However, clothing remained intact, and no third-party tracks were found in the snow around the bodies. According to the Zero Department hypothesis, these injuries are a side effect of a sudden shift in spatial density. The subject doesn't die in the conventional sense. Their molecular structure is squeezed out of our metrics, like a pit from a cherry. At the bottom of the page, a handwritten note in that same flowing calligraphy. The Dyatlov group tried to flee the zone of influence. Nevsky, however, walked into the very epicenter of his own free will. The resistance of the material will be minimal. I drop the folder. It hits the floor with a dull thud, the pages scattering like white birds with broken wings. "No," I whisper. "This is bullshit. This is some kind of mind game." I grab my flashlight and bolt back toward where the exit should be. SFX. Fast, heavy running on concrete. The sound of an echo that begins to take on a life of its own. The footsteps of the echo land a split second later than the protagonists. I sprint past the forest zone section, past aviation. My lungs are burning from the cold, dusty air. I need to see that heavy steel door. I need to turn the key and get out into the raw St. Petersburg air. Let it rain. Let there be traffic. Let there be anything, as long as it's not this silence. I fly around the corner where I remember the turn to the exit being, but instead of a door, I hit a dead end. A blank concrete wall, lined with shelves that weren't there 5 minutes ago. I spin around and run the other way. Another turn. More shelves. SFX. A sudden stop. Heavy, panicked gasping. I stop. The flashlight beam is shaking. I look down at the floor. Right at my feet lie the scattered pages. My file. The photo where the thing is reaching for my shoulder. Did I run in a circle? No. I went straight. I'm sure of it. The archive doesn't just store information on the missing. It's changing. It's rebuilding its own geography to make sure I can't leave. I'm just a new page in its infinite catalog. Chapter 4. The Lineage of Shadows. Continued. I peek out from behind the rack, expecting to see beams of flashlights or faces, but there's nothing. The corridor is empty. The overhead lights flicker in rhythm with their words. But there are no people, no bodies, no faces, just nothing. Only voices drifting out of thin air, and boot prints manifesting themselves in the dust on the floor before vanishing again. They're talking about my disappearance in the past tense, even though I'm still standing right here. My heart is slamming against my ribs like a trapped bird. My eyes shift to the shelf right in front of my face. There's a folder there that I hadn't noticed before. It's brand new. No dust. The name on the spine reads Nevskaya, Elena Igorevna. My sister. My hands go numb. Elena. She has nothing to do with this. She's a teacher. She's waiting for me for dinner tonight. She can't be here. I grab the file, ripping the ties off. Inside, there's only a single sheet of paper. It's not an official report. It's a note written in her handwriting. I can see the faint puckers on the page where her tears hit the paper. She was crying when she wrote this. Mark, if you're reading this, it means you went in after all. Don't look for an exit. There isn't one. I tried to pull you out through this file, but now I'm trapped here myself. In 1988. Look at the date on my file, Mark. Look at the date. I stare at the stamp in the corner of the page. Leningrad Police Department, Special Processing Sector, October 12th, 1988. My sister went missing today, in 2026, but her file has been sitting here since '88. In that exact moment, the bulbs above my head start exploding, one by one. SFX, a rapid-fire series of sharp pops as the lamps burst, the tinkling rain of shattering glass, a rising, unbearable thrumming that deepens into infrasound, making the listener's entire body vibrate. I pull my sister's file to my chest and curl into a ball. In the darkness thick as tar, I see the walls of the archive start to melt. The concrete is liquefying, turning into a black sludge, and the steel shelves are warping at impossible angles. I'm not in a building anymore. I'm inside a machine that grinds up time and people. And I just found the name that makes my reality finally collapse for good. Because at the bottom of Elena's note, she had added a postscript. It wasn't the archive that betrayed us, Mark. It was the man who created it. Look at the signature of the zero section curator. I aim the dying embers of my flashlight at the bottom of the page. There it is. The seal and the signature. Colonel Nevsky, I.S., my father. The man who officially died in a car crash 20 years ago. This chapter takes the surrealism to a new level. For the English voice actor, the goal is to balance the heavy, atmospheric dread with a growing sense of frantic, personal betrayal. Here is the conversational English adaptation. SFX, a dull, vibrating thrum like the roar of a massive power transformer, the sound of crumbling plaster hitting the floor. In the distance, garbled, indecipherable voices drift in and out, sounding like a distorted, chewed-up cassette tape. Chapter 5. Hunting the Ghost. After the lights burst, the darkness didn't just fall, it pounced. It feels physical now, like being submerged in cold, oily water. I'm sitting on the floor, clutching the file with my sister's name to my chest, and I can feel the concrete beneath my palms, pulsing. This isn't a building. It's a giant, sleeping lung, and I'm nothing but a speck of dust it accidentally inhaled. I flick on my flashlight. The beam has gone dim and sickly yellow, as if the batteries are aging 10 times faster in here. The light cuts through the dark to reveal things that weren't here 5 minutes ago. The stacks have shifted. They've formed a narrow, winding corridor. Walls made not of metal, but of endless rows of gray boxes. SFX. The rustle of hundreds of pages turning simultaneously, whipped by an invisible wind. I move forward. Staying still means letting the darkness dissolve me. My light catches the spine of a folder. Case number 1966-M, the lead masks. I stop. I know this one. It's one of the strangest mysteries of the 20th century. Brazil, Vintem Hill. 2 men found dead in business suits, waterproof coats, and homemade lead masks covering their eyes. Next to them, a note. 1630 swallow capsule. After effect, wait for signal. No signs of violence on the bodies. None. I open the file as I walk. These aren't the sanitized reports you find on Wikipedia. There are blueprints in here. The masks, they weren't for radiation or aliens. They were trying to protect themselves from the light of the archive. Subjects attempted to initiate transition independently using primitive shielding devices. Signal was received. Transition partially completed. Bodies remained in our metrics. Consciousness deported to Sector 0. I feel my fingertips go numb. Sector 0. That's where I am right now. These people didn't die. They just exited. Left their shells behind like old clothes. SFX. A sharp screech of metal dragging on concrete. Something heavy has moved in the next aisle over. Who's there? I snap the light toward the sound. Something long and white flashes in the beam. I lunge around the corner of a rack and freeze. A folder is lying open on the floor. On the page is a photo of a woman walking through the woods. Paula Weldon, the student who vanished in the Bennington Triangle back in 1946. Behind her, the case of James Tedford, the man who vanished from a moving bus in front of a dozen witnesses. His luggage stayed on the rack. His checkbook sat on his seat. But he just ceased to be. This sector is a graveyard for everyone who leaked through the cracks in space. And the further I go, the more the files become personal. The neighbor from 4B vanished in 2012. My first grade teacher retired and never came home from the spa. My dog, lost at the summer house when I was 8. The archive isn't just collecting facts. It's draining my memory, materializing it on these shelves. It's building this labyrinth out of my own losses. Mark. A voice drifts from behind a wall of boxes. It's her, Elena. I sprint toward the sound, slamming my shoulder into a flimsy stack of folders. Elena, where are you? I burst into a small, cleared space. There's an old desk sitting there. On top is a lamp with a green glass shade, an ashtray with a smoldering cigarette, and a nameplate. Curator of Section 0. Colonel Nevsky, I.S. But the chair is empty. The cigarette smoke drifts upward, curling into spirals that defy the laws of physics. They're forming letters, words. You are late, Mark. You are always 15 seconds late. Those same 15 seconds the mother in the reserve turned away for. The seconds that separate being from non-being. My paranoia is peaking. I feel like my father is standing behind every single rack. Like he's the architect of this entire nightmare, watching me through the lens of the very camera that took that picture of my back. This is the breaking point, where the supernatural meets the inevitable. For the English voice actor, the tone should shift from frantic desperation to a hollow, chilling acceptance. Here is the conversational English adaptation. I grab the heavy hole puncher from the desk and hurl it with everything I've got at that green lamp. SFX, the sharp crash of shattering glass. Darkness swallows the room instantly. We hear Mark's heavy, jagged breathing, which slowly dissolves into a faint, broken sob. Chapter 6. The Final Protocol. I don't know how much time has passed. Minutes? Hours? Time doesn't exist in the archive. There's only the before and after of a disappearance. Mój fanarik, my flashlight, is dead. I move by touch, sliding my hand along the spines of the folders. The rough cardboard feels like skin. Sometimes I could swear the folders are warm, pulsing with the blood of the people whose names are inked on them. I stumble into something solid, a door, but not the one I came through. This one is small, padded with leather, like the entrance to some old bureaucrat's office. No handle, just a slot for documents. I give it a shove, and it swings open on its own. The creak of the door fades into the rhythmic wash of ocean waves, a sudden vast silence, broken only by the solitary cry of a seagull. Inside, it's spotless. The light comes from the walls, soft, even, perfect. In the middle of the room sits a table set for one. Hot coffee is steaming. A fresh newspaper is waiting. It looks like a scene from the Mary Celeste, the greatest ghost ship in history, found in the middle of the ocean in 1872, perfectly intact. Breakfast was still warm on the table. Jewelry was left untouched in the cabins, but there wasn't a single soul on board. Not a drop of blood. The crew had simply stepped out of the frame of life, leaving the set in perfect order. I walk to the table. The date on the newspaper is today's, but the headline reads, "Journalist Mark Nevsky declared missing, body not recovered." Next to the coffee cup lies the last folder. It's thin, almost weightless, no name on the spine. Only one word, final. I open it. Inside is a blank sheet of paper and a pencil. I get it now. I didn't find the archive. The archive finished writing my story, and now it needs my handwriting to close the case. SFX. The scratch of a pencil on paper. Mark's voice becomes monotonic, drained of all emotion. I'm writing this because I don't have a choice. My father wasn't a monster. He was a caretaker. He made sure the ones who leaked through were filed away as statistics, so they wouldn't break the world with their emptiness. No Testimonies. But now he's gone, and the position is vacant. I look at my hands. They're becoming translucent. I can see the text of the newspaper right through my palm. I'm becoming the ink. I'm becoming the dust on the shelves. I pick up the digital recorder, the one I found at the start, the one with the voices. I hit record. My name is Mark Nevsky. It is March 5th, 2026. If you're listening to this, it means you found the key. It means you're standing on the threshold of vault number 4. I hear footsteps outside the office door. Heavy, confident. It's not a monster. It's a new journalist. A new curious fool who thinks he's writing an article when he's actually writing his own death warrant. Don't turn around, I whisper into the mic. Just read the file. On page 5, you'll find your address and my name. A loud, electric click of a light switch. The sound of a key turning in a lock. Absolute heavy silence for 5 seconds. Then, a burst of static interference, underneath which we can faintly hear children laughing and the wind through the pines at Dyatlov Pass. I set the recorder on the table next to the cold coffee. My body doesn't feel the chill anymore. I feel a strange, terrifying peace. I am part of the archive now. I'm just a line of text in file number 2026-X. I slowly turn toward the door as it begins to open. A man stands in the doorway with a flashlight. His face is buried in shadow, but I see the orange patch on his jacket. I reach out my hand toward his shoulder. "Well, hello there," I say. But the only thing that leaves my lips is the sound of a dry, brittle intake of breath. The recording cuts off sharply. Silence. Epilogue, narrator's voice. Dry, clinical, official. Case number 2026-X is closed. Subject identified as part of the structure. The next cycle will begin in 15 seconds. This final chapter is where the boundaries between the protagonist and the listener completely dissolve. For the English voice actor, this requires a transition from disturbed realization to a haunting, transcendent clarity. Here is the conversational English adaptation for Chapter 7, SFX, a deep, vibrating, low-frequency thrum. The sound of an old film projector whirring, the celluloid constantly tearing and being taped back together. Heavy, wet breathing right into the microphone, which abruptly cuts into total silence. Chapter 7, Echo and Exodus. I'm back here again, at that same abandoned Lisi Nose station, where the rusted rails vanish into a fog that looks like spilled milk. But something's changed. Before, I thought I was walking into a building. Now I realize I'm walking into a state of being. The door to vault number 4 is waiting for me. It doesn't feel like a barrier anymore. It feels like a welcoming, wide-open maw. SFX, a piercing, agonizingly long creak of rusted hinges. The sound of dripping water that suddenly transforms into the rhythmic clatter of a typewriter. I step inside, and the stench of ozone and old paper hits me so hard my head spins. But there's a new note in the air now, the scent of scorched flesh and cheap industrial soap. That's the smell of time itself when it starts to rot. The lamps overhead aren't just flickering, they're having convulsions. Their strobing pops are clicking out Morse code that I'm starting to understand without a cipher. Wait. Watch. Vanish. My internal monologue isn't mine anymore. It's a choir of voices. Thousands of the missing are whispering through my lips, talking over one another. Mark, find us. Mark, forget us. Mark, become us. I try to plug my ears, but the sound is vibrating out from inside my own bones. I walk up to the first rack. It looks infinite. The folders here don't just sit. They breathe. I run my hand along the spines, and under my fingers, I don't feel cardboard. I feel dry, parchment-like skin. Every folder is a person. Their pulse, their final terror, their unpaid debts, and every "I love you" they never got to say. I pull out a file that practically jumps into my hands. It's so old the cover crumbles into gray ash, settling on my boots. Case number 1918-C, subject USS Cyclops. SFX, the roar of a storm at sea, the screech of metal grinding on metal, and the cries of seagulls that slowly morph into human screams. I read the lines aloud, and my voice sounds like it's coming from the bottom of a deep well. March 4th, 1918. The massive U.S. Navy collier Cyclops, carrying 306 passengers and a cargo of manganese ore, departed from Barbados. Last message: weather fair, all well. After that, silence. Not a single SOS. Not a scrap of wreckage. Not one life jacket. A vessel weighing 19,000 tons simply ceased to exist in three-dimensional space. A search operation covering thousands of square miles yielded nothing. 306 people didn't drown. They were extracted. I turn the page. There's a report clipped here, dated the following year from Secret Intelligence Archives. During a deep-sea scan using experimental eye technology, no magnetic anomalies corresponding to the ship's metal were found. However, a chronovoid was recorded, an acoustic echo of events that haven't happened yet. On the underwater recordings, sounds are audible, city traffic, and a male voice dictating numbers. I freeze. Those numbers. Those are my bank account details. Tucked inside the Cyclops file is a small scrap of paper, written in red pencil. The manganese was just a pretext. We needed 306 units of consciousness to stabilize the first sector of the archive. Mark, you are number 307. You are the one who will close the perimeter. The geometry of madness, SFX. Mark's footsteps accelerate. We hear him shoulder check the racks, folders cascading to the floor like a paper landslide. I run deeper. The archive is expanding. The ceiling vanishes into an endless black void where, instead of stars, those same twitching lamps burn. I feel my legs becoming light, almost weightless. The floor beneath them seems transparent now. I can see other levels of the archive beneath me descending for miles. Down there, shadows are wandering, people in clothes from every era, knights in rusted plate, pilots in leather caps, kids in Soviet pioneer ties. They're all walking in circles, clutching their own case files to their chests. "Dad!" I scream, and my echo comes back to me as laughter. I stumble into a section labeled "The Future." The folders here are made of some strange material, like frozen light. They're cold, cold as ice. I'm terrified to touch them, but my body moves on its own, reaching for one. There's no number on it, only the words, the final address. I open it, and my eyes start to water from the unnatural whiteness of the paper. There's no text, just a map of our city. But it looks wrong. There are no street names. Instead, there are names of people. Ivan Petrov Street, Elena Smirnova Avenue, Mark Nevsky Alley. I look at the spot where my house should be, my apartment, where I've lived my whole life, where I drank my coffee and watched the rain just this morning. In the column for address, it reads, St. Petersburg, Archive of the Missing Street, Building 0, Apartment Infinity. And right next to it, a photo of my building's entrance. But the door is boarded up with planks, and those same calligraphic letters I saw in the very first file are burned into the wood. No one is here anymore. Everyone has gone inside. I flip the page. My hands are shaking so hard I can barely hold the paper. On the next sheet is a copy of my birth certificate. Novgrafe. But in the place of birth box, it says, Sector 0, Vault number 4. I didn't find the archive. The archive found its missing piece, Shakshunk. Suddenly, every single lamp in the archive shatters at once. Absolute silence follows, broken only by the synchronized ticking of thousands of wristwatches, the watches of every missing person, piled into a single massive heap. I stand in the silence, feeling reality finally unravel. I'm not a journalist anymore. I'm not even human. I am a witness. I am the one meant to testify to the end of this world and the beginning of the next. I see a light at the end of the corridor, a tiny, dim flashlight beam. Someone is walking toward me. "Dad?" I whisper again. The figure draws closer. His face slowly bleeds out of the shadows. He looks exactly like me, just 30 years older. His eyes are two empty holes reflecting the infinite rows of shelves. He holds out a folder, his last folder. "You're late, Mark," he says, using my own voice. "You're always 15 seconds late." I take the folder. My fingers pass right through his palm like smoke. I look at the first page. There's no report, no photo, just one single line printed in bold. And when I read it, my heart gives its final beat and stops. The address listed as the place of final residence. It isn't my house. It isn't the archive. It's the address of the person listening to this audiobook right now. And my last name is written in the box marked Curator. I look up. The man in front of me is gone. I'm standing alone in a hollow hall, and I know I see you now. I see you sitting there in your headphones. I see you looking around. I see the fear in your eyes. And I'm already writing your file. the scratch of a pencil on paper. Mark's voice gets quieter and thinner, dissolving into the rustle of turning pages. Name, entered, address, confirmed, time of disappearance, now. A sudden violent slam of a door. Silence. In the quiet, a distant, barely audible voice whispers, 308. Welcome. Epilogue. Narrator's voice distorted by heavy static. Attention. Listening to this material constitutes consent to the transfer of personal data into the permanent possession of the archive. Please do not leave the premises until the arrival of Sector 0 personnel. Do not turn around. We are already here. A final, jarring, low bass chord that cuts off abruptly. Total silence.